We'll be setting up the DJI rcs2 for an auto tracking system, and it can be a little bit complicated, but I've assembled these a few times and it works really well for what it does. The piece that really makes everything work here is the RavenEye image transmission system. This hooks up to the DJI rcs2 and it transmits the HDMI signal that's coming off of your camera to your phone. And that's where you can use the ActiveTrack 3.0 to track your subject. And then everything else that we have here is just accessories so we can live stream them. I'm using the Sony a6400. It's just a tried and true camera. It can film 4K 30 frames a second and comes in at a pretty good price of around $800 to $900. I have the zoom lens here, which goes in a bit farther. It's an 18 to 105, so you have a good zoom range there depending on what you're going to be filming. The HDMI splitter is going to take the signal from the camera, the HDMI signal. It'll split it into 4 ways. So I'll input here, and then I'll have one going up into the RavenEye transmitter to transmit to the phone, and then I'll be able to have one going to the actual computer that's going to be streaming that, or if you wanted even more, you have 2 extra slots. You could run one to a recording software if you wanted to archive the footage. There's a lot you can do, so that's why I got a 4-port, so I have more ports to play with if I ever need to expand in the future. The focus motor is really cool because you can hook it up to the camera lens, and remotely from the app you'll actually be able to zoom in and out, which is going to be really useful if it's farther away. And then just a couple cables to hook everything together and connect the video signals. Let's get all this out of the boxes. Whenever you get the Pro combo for the gimbal, it comes with this nice case, and then it also comes with the focus motor and the RavenEye transmission system, so it's just simpler to get it all as the combo. Now typically there's so much setup to bring this all up, I wouldn't imagine you would ever put it back in this case, but if you ever needed to make this portable, you could put it back in here, and in fact there's so many pouches and things, you could pack up all these HDMI wires and cables if you needed to. You can see that it looks like there's a lot of pieces, but let's go ahead and get started. Fold up the gimbal into its working position. To make everything easier, I'm going to put the base on. This base feels completely redesigned, and I think they made it out of aluminum instead of plastic. Install the lens on the camera. One really big thing about this lens, and the reason why I went with it, is because everything is internal right here. So it doesn't have a telephoto end that sticks out of the lens. Whenever I zoom in and out, everything is internal in the lens, so if I zoom in, you see nothing is happening externally on the outside of the camera, and that helps significantly with balancing the gimbal, because if things are moving in and out, that's going to change the center of gravity. This is going to keep that mostly in the same spot. It might change a little bit, but nothing that's going to be a problem. Unlock the slide tray, push the button, and it'll pull right out. You'll need one of these little screws that'll go into the bottom so we can attach it to the camera. Push this little lock button again and slide it back in place. The RavenEye transmitter mounts to the shoe on top. It's important that the antennas aren't facing towards the metal arms of the gimbal. It comes with a strap that you'll be able to attach to your lens that allows you to connect to the gear on the focus motor. Get it nice and tight and push everything together. This bracket is what's going to mount the focus motor with a rod connecting them. There's 2 screws that go in here. This metal bracket is what connects to the focus motor using a little metal rod. Put it on the front of the gimbal. Snug these up, but be careful because you're going into aluminum, just tight enough to hold. And a screw that'll hold the rod in place, but just have that loose for now. Put the motor on the rod. Now this gear meshes with this piece right here. Tighten all the screws to hold everything in place. Now whenever we spin this, we have control over the zoom. Start to plug everything in. This is an RSS port, and that swings down and around to the ports on the bottom of the gimbal and plug that into the RSS port. We'll plug in the RavenEye, and same thing. This goes down and around the gimbal to this port right here. Then the focus motor, and that goes right into the 3rd port. Let's install the lens support. This is something that's cool they added in the Pro combo, is you've got a little phone mount that mounts to the side of the gimbal, and you tighten it up with the screw there, and you can fit your phone in here, and then that's what connects to the RavenEye transmitter. So if you're using the RavenEye transmitter, ActiveTrack, or a lot of the other features it has, it's right here with your gimbal, or if you're hand holding the gimbal, it's right there and it makes it really easy. The idea of this splitter is that you've got 4 different outputs and 1 input. And then you have an output here on the camera. And this is the main output. It can output the 4K 30 resolution or the 1080p 60 resolution. An HDMI cable that goes from micro HDMI will go into the input here. And then it basically copies that onto 3 other outputs. I'll take one of those outputs, and that goes right back up to the Raven Eye. And that gives the Raven Eye an image transmission signal that it's going to send to the phone. And I got the thinnest HDMI cable I could find because having thinner HDMI cables is really useful whenever you're working with gimbals. You might have to, say, tie it right here and then tie it right there so that the cables are nice and clean and managed. But then it's really light. If you have really heavy, thick cables, it's going to be pretty tricky for the gimbal to move it. It's going to be hard to balance. The thinner, more flexible cables are what you want to go with gimbals. Balancing the gimbal is always a bit tricky, especially with all these accessories that we've got on here. So the main thing you want to do is lock all the axes. And there's these little screws that move in and out, and that's what locks the axes in place so they don't move. Lock all of them, and then just unlock this top one here. And we're gonna start balancing this one, and then go down to this one, and it just makes the whole process simpler, and it gets you a more accurate balance. The main goal is to have it stay wherever you set it. And right now you can see it's front heavy. Whenever I let go, it moves down to the front. I'm gonna loosen up some of these different locks, bring it back a little bit, lock it again, and see that's more balanced in this direction. Now we need to adjust this one here to get it balanced more in this direction. This slider right here is what adjusts the front to back balance, whether it's front heavy or back heavy. Now we have to work with top heavy and bottom heavy, and that's what this adjuster right here is for. And right now it's bottom heavy. Every time I let go, the bottom swings down. So I need to bring the bottom up a little bit. So I'll loosen that, bring it back up, tighten it, see where we're at. Still bottom heavy, loosen it, bring it up, tighten it. Now that might still be a little bottom heavy, but that is pretty close. I would say that's good. You want the axis just to stay wherever you put it, and that's what's happening right here. We'll go ahead and lock that axis and move on to the next one. We'll unlock this one, and you can already see it's moving to this side, and this is probably one of the easiest axes to balance because it's heavy this way, so we'll just move it the opposite way. Now we're heavy the opposite way, and it's just a back and forth game of getting it right where you want it to be. There we go. Now we'll lock that in place. We'll unlock the last axis, and you might be saying, well, how do I balance this because it just sits there? You have to tilt this forward about like that, and if it wants to fall to one side, like it is right here, it's heavy to one side and the other. It's not balanced like a point. You want the balanced center line to be right above it. So basically we're just gonna loosen that, move it, see where we're at whenever we tilt it forward. Now we'll see how it's falling the other direction. So I moved it a little bit too much. Bring it back a little bit. That's getting closer, but it still falls forward that way, so I'm just going to move it a little bit more. Now that is staying where I put it, and that's how you know it's balanced. Now you unlock all the axes, and wherever you put the gimbal, it should stay. Whatever position you want it to be in, it shouldn't fall down. Just put it there and it stays. Or even if you put it in whatever position you want and you move it forward, it should stay just like that. So that's how you know you have a really well balanced gimbal, and it's really pretty easy. It's just a matter of doing it a few times and then also just knowing where to move the axes, and it's just back and forth until you get it. We'll plug it in and start charging the gimbal. With it powered up, everything looks to be working great, and one of the cool things is how I can adjust that focus motor with the front dial here. and that is really going to be useful.